Welcome to the Internet of Assets, the podcast about the not-so-distant future of finance. I'm your host Marcus Engel, marketing expert at Dusk Network, and each episode we'll take a deep dive into a specific area of finance. In today's episode, we'll feature our own research department from Dusk Network. First of all, we have Marta here and Xavier. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And most of you that have been following the project for a while have probably heard or read something about from Marta and from Xavier. Marta, you probably know from elliptic curves, and Xavier, you know from the recently groundbreaking research that he has done on CITADEL. And we'll talk about all that. We will talk about the research project and much more. But without further ado, first introductions. Marta, Xavier, take the stage and introduce yourself quickly.
Okay, so hello everyone. I'm Xavi. I'm a cryptography researcher at Dusk Network. And my main focus when working there is zero-knowledge proofs, and actually, more specifically, working on how protocols can use zero-knowledge proofs for providing more privacy to users in the context of blockchain, but also Internet of Things, peer-to-peer communications, and so on. And that's more or less what I'm working on.
I am Marta. I've been at Dusk for some time, so yeah, maybe some of you already know me because I've talked quite a lot already. I joined Dusk some time ago. My background is in mathematics, and I am part of the research team where we mostly focus on the cryptographic aspects of Dusk. And I am based in Terrassa, which is a city near Barcelona, and this is usually where I work from.
Awesome. I'm very excited. I think it's the first time that we do a podcast with actually not an external guest, but with people from our own organization. But I think this is also a good way of getting to know people that work from us and make this wonderful project so successful. And we'll dive right into it, because I think if we think about blockchain projects, if we think about or if people think about blockchain projects, most of the time I think the job titles are very clear. They think about there has to be a developer, so he's probably writing some code. There's going to be people that work in marketing. There's going to be people that do business development. There are going to be people that organize events. But I think if we talk about a research department, not a lot of people know exactly what you do. And question to you, Marta, is that something that you can explain a little bit more about the role of research within Dusk and also how it contributes of us having cutting edge technology?
Yeah, you're right that I've been asked very often what is it that we do, and well, to me it's pretty clear, but I guess I don't make it clear to other people because I keep getting this question. So almost any blockchain project they use a lot of cryptography. So in blockchain, we use different types of cryptographic primitives everywhere. So from the signatures when we sign the transactions, for example, or the hashes that we use for getting from one block to another. So cryptography is almost everywhere. And those are like the building blocks of what we do. So we at the research at Dusk, we are people that have mostly a background on cryptography, so that we know very well all these blocks. And then as a research team, I would say that part of our job consists on looking into these blocks and make sure that they are still functional and secure, so that we are using the right ones. So we do like some security proofs in there. Then we also provide new solutions. So if we need to make changes on some of these blocks, then we also figure out what is it that needs to change and why and how we should change it. And we also build new solutions for new use cases that every day come in. So if I can use an analogy, I would say that this is similar to if you want to build a building, you need an architect. So you go and you say, hey, I need to build a house. We are this amount of people. We like this, we like that. This is our wish list. And then the architect goes home and he needs to think of a project and develop that. And for that, he needs to know the materials, so he has some expertise on that. So he does not really start from scratch. And then once he has a proposal, he needs to talk to the constructors. So in our case, we would be, let's say, the architects, and then we would go talk to the programmers and say like, hey, we have this idea. Do you think it's viable? Can you do it? Can you implement it? Can you build it? And once we have that, then we start developing this. But we also, it's not like an architect that once the building is done, they are good to go, but we actually keep reviewing that so the building is really up to date. I mean, if there are new glasses for the windows or something like that, then we need to say like, hey, we need to change this, or that's not secure anymore, so let's change it. So that would be like the three main things that we do. First, we check that everything is secure, we provide new models for new use cases, and we review that everything is okay.
That's amazing. That's a beautiful analogy as well for it. I think also very remarkable for people to remember. And I hope no one asks you this question ever again. Otherwise, we can now point them to the podcast. And this was actually one question from the community. I mean, you already mentioned a little bit like what areas you focus on and how you basically work with them and also process them. But you mentioned that you read a lot of papers, you review them. How do you stay up to date in such a ever-changing market like the blockchain and the Web3 industry?
It's not easy. I would say that it's an industry that moves really fast. So, for example, if you look at other research areas, usually you have an academic paper that goes out and then it takes ages until someone reads it and finds an application for that and then implements it. So it takes a lot. Whereas here in the blockchain space, we can see that there is a paper out there and in a couple of days there are already 5 projects using it. So we do a lot of reading of academic papers, but also papers that come from the industry. We talk a lot with colleagues so that we know what is it that they are doing and if there's anything relevant for us. And for the second part, it's also important for us to attend to events and conferences so that we see what is going on around and if we can find something that's relevant to us and we can apply and improve.
And how does it work? Like, are you then actively proposing always to the development team, for example, different topics to look into it, or is it also sometimes the other way around that the developers come to you and say like, hey, this might be an area of opportunity where we can move things around or where we can change something?
It happens both ways. So we've done both. So, for example, currently we're working on a project called Zedger, which the requirements actually come more from a use case. So we were building a proposal and now we are currently talking to developers to see if our current proposal makes sense. So there's a lot of communication when building a project like this, but it has also gone the other way around, so that at some point developers find something that they don't think it's efficient or it's not working for them, so they come and ask, hey, can we do this in a better way? Or here we're not sure if what we're doing is really safe or not, so we check if what they are doing is actually right or not. So it goes both ways, yeah.
Nice. And what interests you the most about working in the research department? Like, what do you find most exciting?
I think I personally like the fact that you see the whole process. So, for example, in academia, you have an idea, you develop it, you write it down, and that's mostly it. You don't really care later if that's implemented or not. I mean, yeah, okay, maybe you want to, but I mean, it's not really your job. So sometimes your papers end up being a product, but very often they don't really do. So what I do really like here is that first, the problems that we get, they have a specific purpose. So there's a reason why we do this research, and you see the whole process. So you start with the idea, then you develop it, you make a protocol, and at the end, this is something that gets implemented. So the fact that we do research to solve real problems that our developers are experiencing or our networks, and also that we get to see the end of it, so the final solution implemented. I think that's what I appreciate the most, and that's the main difference with academia, where you only see a small slice of this. So I really like to see the whole of it. Yeah.
Nice. And it's also, but I think it can also be the other way around, right? That in the end, if you see the way it is implemented, it can also be proven to be not working or proven to be maybe your assumptions were wrong. How do you address that then also together with the team if things are maybe like challenging for the team or if you have assumptions that are then wrong?
Yeah, here I would say that there are different scenarios that can happen. So, for example, one of the things is, like you were saying, at the end, cryptography is not exactly maths. I mean, at the end we have certain assumptions. So we say we build a model where we say, okay, it's safe as long as these assumptions hold. Usually when we talk about assumptions are problems that we believe are hard to solve. So if no one is capable of solving these problems, then we are good to go. So what can happen in the future is that someone finds a way to solving these problems, and therefore our model is not secure anymore. So that's one thing that can happen, and then it's our job to be up to date and to say like, hey, our assumptions are still secure, so no one has broken them. So in that case, this is the reason why we formalize everything, and we have a specific place where we say these are our assumptions, so that we narrow down what is it that we should look for. So if there, for example, if we say a typical problem is called the discrete logarithm, so we say the discrete logarithm should be a hard problem, and then we keep checking for papers. So just make sure that there's no paper called attack to the discrete logarithm. So that's something that can happen, but I would say this is on our side to check that there's no no problem on the theoretical side. And then other things that can happen is that when implementing the protocols, there are bugs or there are implementation problems. And then we didn't think of those problems while we were building the model. So when that is the case, as you said, usually the developer comes and says like, hey, you didn't expect this problem to happen. It shouldn't happen in general. I mean, we should do our job properly, but it may be the case that it come and say like, you didn't take this into account. And then usually we do a review of the protocol, and we see if something needs to be changed and what, and propose a new solution.
Yeah, amazing. I think it's very nice to have also sometimes those insights, what happens behind closed doors or a closed Discord surface that you just see people being in and developing solutions for Dusk. And speaking about those solutions, one of them is of course Citadel, which Xavier was working on for the past 4 years, successfully finished his PhD last week. So congratulations for that, first of all.
Thank you very much.
Take us through it. Like, how did you come up with this hypothesis of your research paper?
Well, basically, it's a process that it's not simply saying, okay, I'm going to build Citadel and start working on the final protocol. It's something that starts with a little idea and then evolves over time. The first paper on this area was published like 3 years ago, I think, if I remember correctly, which was called Sans. And then I saw that there were some improvements that could be done over Sans. And then I published Fort. If you remember, it's another authentication protocol, self-sovereign identity protocol, which also had some things that had to be improved. And from the problems that I saw on Fort appeared Citadel. Basically, one of the problems that I had there in Fort was that it was meant to be deployed on the Ethereum network. It was something that started way before I started working for Dusk. But then I knew about Dusk. I started working here. And by knowing the properties, the privacy properties of Dusk, I thought, okay, we could try to improve Fort by implementing something that it's deployed on top of Dusk and making use of the privacy properties of Dusk. So from here, Citadel became a thing. And it's basically how it appeared, yeah.
Super nice. And when was the moment that you really realized that you kind of got into writing and into researching this topic more? Like, what was like the kind of like trigger that really interested you so much to spend 4 years of your life researching this?
Well, everything started when I did my master's degree on cybersecurity. I love cybersecurity since a lot of years ago. But then during the master's, I took a subject which was called advanced cryptography. And it was the first time that I started to work on cryptography. And I started with advanced cryptography. And I liked it so much that I started doing more research on that area. I started to know about zero knowledge proofs. They seem to me a very interesting cryptographic primitive. So the rest is what happened. I started the PhD on this kind of problems that I want to solve, how to empower users with more privacy. And 4 years have passed by very, very fast.
And at the end, you succeeded. So that's very, very, very positive.
That's the important thing.
Exactly. If you could summarize in a few simple sentences, I mean, it's always a little bit difficult spending 4 years of your life researching a lot and someone asking you to make it very simple. But if you would try, could you summarize kind of like the hypothesis and like the problem that Citadel solves?
Yeah, basically the problem that we have nowadays is that if we want to use a digital service, like for instance, video streaming subscription or anything that you can imagine, we have no other choice but to trust that the service provider who is offering that service will behave correctly for what concerns the privacy of our data. So I wanted to solve the problem, and to solve it, basically I said, okay, what we have around. I started to research, to check out the state of the art, and I found the term self-sovereign identity, which is basically an approach which defines that a user should be able to manage their sensitive information in a fully transparent manner. And it's basically what I found, that there should be a way to actually create a self-sovereign protocol which complies with a set of properties. For instance, being able to prove in zero knowledge that you know some secret information. For instance, that you have the right to use a service, that you have a license to use a service.
Yeah, super interesting. What other kind of applications or use cases could you see? I mean, if I think about privacy of data, there's like so much that comes to mind. But like, what were the thought patterns that ran through your mind when you were finished and philosophing over the potential use cases?
Wow. So basically, I mean, Citadel is like it's like a framework that can be applied anywhere. And for instance, one of the use cases that we envision in Dusk is KYC, being able to prove to any entity that you have the right to do some action. For instance, I don't know, you have an exchange and you want to buy money in that exchange, cryptocurrencies, for instance. And usually all of these exchanges request you a KYC. So you shouldn't need to do a KYC process with a lot of sensitive information about yourself in all the companies that you want to interact with. You should be able to provide that to a service provider who allows or who does the process of verifying your identity, and later on being able to prove to anyone in zero knowledge that you have followed the correct process for the KYC. And then everyone should be convinced that actually you have the right to buy money, buy cryptocurrencies here, or take any other action. And this is a very specific use case. You can also think of, for instance, IoT devices. Right now you have medical devices changing information with a server about the patients. You should be able to do all this stuff in zero knowledge, also being able to communicate with the server and say, hey, I have this device, I'm the person who's carrying this personal data, but I only want to share the data that's important for me, for my health, not also my name, my identity, and so on. So I think the possibilities that you have there are many. You have many possibilities.
Yeah, it also feels like this. It could be endless. I mean, there are so many companies that currently store data. And I mean, what we've seen in the past as well, that this kind of like data storages are a lot of times operated by a lot of humans, which of course can lead to a lot of human errors, which when it comes to privacy and data is not very favorable, of course. Have you also looked into kind of like other projects that work on those kind of like on similar topics than Citadel. Is there anything that comes to mind? Is there anything that you see, and maybe also looking how it can differentiate from your solution?
Yes, actually, there are a couple of very interesting projects around there that I saw. The only thing is that most of them, for what I saw, as to the best of my knowledge, they focus in very blockchain use cases where they try to build something that it's for having an identity which is meant to be used only on chain. I repeat, to the best of my knowledge. But the idea of Citadel was trying to build something that can be used off chain, but making use of blockchain technologies. In this case, Dusk Network, being able to store your licenses on chain, your identity on chain, and later on proof off chain that you have the right to use those services. Services that are off chain, not on chain services. So I think that's pretty much the main difference, that Citadel is meant to be used anywhere, not only for blockchain applications, but also for peer-to-peer communications, but by means of the blockchain.
Nice. And if you look a little bit into the future, because I think that's what also everyone wants to know, how do you see the adoption of Citadel over the next years?
Well, I'm pretty excited with that. Of course, first of all, we need a mainnet for that. But after mainnet becomes a thing, I think that the Citadel can be deployed very quickly. And as I said, the use cases for that are many. So I'm pretty sure that by providing this tool to everyone, a lot of people will come up with more use cases, not only the KYC that we want to provide, but many other use cases that can be adopted by people. So yeah, I'm pretty sure that mass adoption can become a thing. And yes, I'm excited about that. Yeah, let's see what happens.
I think a lot of people are excited, not only in our organization but also outside. If you, the listener, is interested in reading the paper, it is published, the paper, so it is accessible for everyone, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, well, it's not published because in academia, published it means published to a proceedings of a conference or a journal. In this case, it's a manuscript, but it's available in Archive, which is a repository for manuscripts, academic manuscripts. So anyone can go there and check out the paper. And if they want to provide feedback, they are free to do that. I will be happy to listen.
Yes. We will also link the link in the show notes. And if you want to read a little bit more about the use cases, you can also read on Dusk Network. There are a couple of blog posts about Citadel and its adoption. Last but not least, we talked already a little bit about the future. And then going back to Marta for our last question. I mean, we've talked about research, we've talked about the process, we've talked about Citadel as well as one of the best cases that we have developed internally with the help of Xavier, of course, pushing through. What other projects are you working on currently, and what can we expect to see in the future from the research department?
Yeah, as you said, one of the projects is Citadel. It's a work that we're very proud of, and we would really like to see it implemented soon. So that's one of the projects. Then we also have, on the security side, we are really doing a very deep formal analysis on the security of our transaction model. That's one of the projects that we are working on. And another one that is the one I was talking about before, and that we are in a stage that we're talking with developers, is Zedger. And Zedger is a project that will allow companies to issue and trade securities, that is like stocks, bonds, or any sort of securities. And it's a project, it's very exciting because I personally don't come from a financial background, so I learned a lot about how the financial world works in reality, and also like the legal side of it. And so right now we are in a stage where we have a proposal for this to come through. As I said, we're discussing it with the developers, and probably we will have a proof of concept of it very soon, and we will iterate over that. So that's a project that we're really, really excited about as well.
Wow. So a lot of a lot of spoilers here, and I'm quite curious that I'm quite confident that the community will be very happy about those developments. To sum up, I think it was an amazing conversation to get to know the research department at Dusk. We talked about the architects basically of Dusk behind the developers, the research team. We talked about the CITADEL and its implications, its adoption, and the future use cases. And of course, we talked about Zedger as well. So I think there are many exciting things coming up from the research department, from Dusk itself. Thank you so much for joining today, Marta and Xavier. It was a pleasure having you here. My name is Marcus, and this was the Internet of Assets, the podcast about the not-so-distant future of finance. Thanks for listening.